Today we're talking about something I think many people are quietly experiencing right now, especially empaths and highly sensitive people. And that thing is spiritual burnout. Not just exhaustion from life, not just emotional fatigue, but burnout from the actual process of trying to heal yourself. Because somewhere along the way, healing became another pressure system. Meditate every day, journal consistently, heal the wounds, clear the blocks, stay high vibe, protect your energy, regulate perfectly, manifest correctly. And what started as support slowly became another form of self-monitoring. Another thing to optimize, another thing to get right. And for many sensitive people, that pressure quietly activates the exact nervous system patterns they were trying to heal in the first place. Welcome back to Intuition on Tap, the podcast where science meets soul, and where we explore intuition, sensitivity, emotional well-being, nervous system regulation, and grounded spiritual growth. I'm your host, Heidi, and today we're having a deeper conversation about healing fatigue, nervous system overwhelm, and one of the most important distinctions I think we can learn on the spiritual path. And that is that not all resistance is self-sabotage. Sometimes resistance is actually wisdom. Sometimes your soul is not avoiding growth. Sometimes your system is actually asking for integration. And we're going to unpack the difference between what I call soul resistance and ego avoidance, because they feel very different. At the end of this episode, I'll also guide you through a companion recalibration process to help you identify whether the resistance you're feeling is fear or fullness. So take a breath, drop your shoulders, unclench your jaw a little, and let's get into it. I honestly think we are living through a healing fatigue epidemic right now, especially online. There's so much content around trauma healing, nervous system regulation, manifestation, attachment wounds, emotional processing, energy clearing, subconscious rewiring, shadow work, frequency work. You get the picture. It just keeps going. And while so much of it can genuinely help people, I know because I'm a therapist and practitioner, and that's what I want to do. But there's also a point where healing itself can become actually overwhelming. Because now people are not just trying to survive life, which is pretty tricky right now. They're trying to optimize every emotional response they have while surviving life. And for empaths and highly sensitive people, this becomes particularly exhausting because many sensitive people already spent years unconsciously monitoring environments for safety. They have spent their time reading moods, tracking the emotional shifts, predicting the outcomes, managing emotional energy, and their nervous system has already been trained to be hyper alert long before they found spirituality. Then spirituality enters the picture and accidentally says, well, now you have to monitor yourself too. So instead of why is my boss upset, it becomes why did that trigger me? What does this mean? What wound is this? What energy is this? Did I manifest this? Is there something inside me that I need to heal? Am I blocked? Am I out of alignment? And suddenly the nervous system never gets to rest because healing became another hypervigilance loop. Now, let me be clear. Self-awareness matters, healing matters, regulation matters. I'm sure you've heard me say once before, if we're still breathing, I believe we still have work to do. So it's not about avoiding healing. But there is a difference between awareness and obsession or hyperfixation. And some people are quietly producing more cortisol, more stress, trying to heal than they were before they entered the spiritual space or exploring their spirituality, because the body cannot necessarily interpret relentless self-monitoring as safety. The nervous system doesn't care where the pressure comes from, and whether it comes from work, family, survival, or healing performance. Pressure is pressure. And many people are spiritually exhausted because they've turned healing into another full-time job. So now let's look at when healing becomes identity. Something else happens in healing spaces that I think deserves a really honest conversation. Some people unconsciously become attached to healing as an identity, not because they're doing anything wrong, but because healing can become familiar. So you become the healing person, the self-aware person, the hyper-spiritual person, the person doing the work. And eventually, there can be some fear around stopping that. Because if you stop constantly processing, well, then what? And if you stop searching for wounds, then who are you? And I think this is where some people accidentally become trapped in permanent emotional excavation. Always digging, always analyzing, always searching for another layer. But healing is not supposed to become your entire personality. The goal of healing is not endless processing. The goal is increased capacity for life and joy and happiness, more peace, steadiness, more discernment, more emotional, psychological, spiritual, energetic flexibility, more presence, more connection. And at some point, healing has to become an expression of living. And honestly, I think some people are exhausted because their nervous system never actually gets the chance to exit repair mode. Imagine renovating a house 24 hours a day while still trying to live inside of it. Eventually, even the sound of the tools become unbearable. Your system needs the integration, and it needs pauses. It needs seasons where you are not trying to optimize yourself every 5 minutes. And for highly sensitive people especially, integration often happens through their ordinary life experience. So what I mean by that is through laughter and friendships and going out in nature and having routines and expressing their creativity and allowing their themselves time for guilt-free rest. It also very importantly includes embodiment and simplicity, not endless analysis. So let's look at soul resistance versus ego avoidance. And this really brings me to the distinction that is super important and that I really want to explore today with you. Because I think many people have been taught that all resistance is fear. That if you don't want to do the thing, it automatically means you're sabotaging yourself or you're responding from fear or your shadow. But I don't actually believe that's always true. Sometimes resistance is ego avoidance, and sometimes resistance is soul wisdom. These are very different frequencies. So let's break it down. Let's start with unpacking what is ego avoidance. Ego avoidance tends to feel loud and anxious and urgent and maybe mentally repetitive, catastrophic, defensive. It's really a fear-based experience, if we can just boil it down to the bare bones. And it usually comes with a lot of mental noise, like, what if I fail? What if I embarrass myself? What if I can't handle it? What if it goes wrong? Have I, failed? Am I going to let people down? Will people judge me? So there's contraction. And like I said, there's fear and emotional urgency, and overthinking. So that ego avoidance often tries to protect you from expansion by keeping you small and familiar or hidden. And importantly, it usually feels emotionally charged. The way that I used to explain it to my clients was, your ego, you're not going to get rid of it. So just let that go, right? It's there for a reason. It is there to keep you alive. It is that tiny inner voice, or sometimes very loud screaming voice, depending, that says, don't step out in front of that bus, or that person feels unsafe, or that is not the best choice for you. So it is constantly trying to keep you alive. Now, the problem with that also, the flip side of that, is that it can also keep you stuck, like I was saying, in places that keep you small, keep you hidden, and keep you, I guess, in a way safe because it is familiar. So this can include toxic and abusive relationships, terrible workplaces, not really allowing you to be fully self-expressed, because that inner voice is, well, we don't know what might happen if you leave this space, because in this space, at least we know that we can survive. It might not be comfortable. We might not like it. We might not enjoy it. We may not be thriving. And in fact, it may be terrible, but at least we know we can survive. And so it will tell you stories to keep you there, to keep you safe from its perspective. Now, compare that to what I call soul resistance. Because soul resistance feels very, very different. It's much quieter and softer. It's more neutral. And it often feels less like panic or surrender or suppression, and more like a calm closing of a door. Not no, but more not now. There's less emotional charge, less urgency, less mental chaos, and often it comes after periods of intense growth, healing, processing, or expansion. And people report that it feels like fullness, emotional saturation, perhaps overstimulation, completion, energetic tiredness. So it's not fear-based. It's more of a recognition that I need some space. I need some integration. I need some time just to rest. And I think this distinction matters deeply because many sensitive people have learned to override themselves constantly. Their body says, I need rest. And the mind says, well, that's because you're being lazy. Their system says, we've integrated enough for now. And the healing identity says, no, keep going, push through that wound. Keep going, push through that trauma. But sometimes your soul is not actually resisting growth. Sometimes your soul is just resisting overload. And that's different. And this is where discernment becomes so very important. Because not every closed door is self-sabotage. And sometimes it's actually wisdom. Sometimes it's your nervous system saying, I cannot metabolize more input right now. And honestly, some people don't need another breakthrough. They need stabilization. They need embodiment. And they need a season of living. Let's now look at spiritual and emotional manipulation that occurs in healing spaces. Because I think we need to have a very honest conversation about this, and that it can contribute very strongly to spiritual burnout. That is, as I said, spiritual and emotional manipulation inside healing spaces. Because unfortunately, Not every teacher, mentor, coach, healer, or spiritual community is operating from integrity. And this becomes especially important for empaths and highly sensitive people, or anybody that is in a vulnerable state, because sensitive people are often more naturally open, trusting, reflective, and most importantly, willing to self-examine, which means when something feels off, many immediately assume, oh, it must be me. It must be something to do with me. And they can also tend to go into comparison. Well, if nobody else in this space is feeling activated or irritated or confronted, then it must be me. And that's important because manipulative dynamics often survive by teaching people to distrust their own intuition. I'm going to say that again. Manipulative dynamics often survive by teaching people to distrust their own intuition. So what does this look like? You might hear things like, your resistance is just ego. Your fear means that this is your next big breakthrough. You're being triggered because healing is working. If you leave now, then you're just sabotaging yourself and all the work that you've already done. Your nervous system discomfort is just expansion. Your intuition is lying to you. You need to surrender more. Or my least favorite, you're just not ready for this level of awareness yet. And while sometimes discomfort is genuinely part of growth, 100%, manipulation happens when someone consistently overrides your internal signals in order to maintain influence, control, emotional dependence, and even financial dependence. A healthy teacher or practitioner helps you come back to yourself. They're kind of like the detached witness there to hold the space for you so you can self-heal. An unhealthy dynamic slowly disconnects you from yourself, your support, and your ecosystem. And that distinction matters enormously because intuition is not meant to be outsourced. And one of the biggest red flags in spiritual spaces is when your humanity becomes inconvenient to someone else's authority. If your exhaustion is dismissed, if your boundaries are punished, if your discernment is shamed, if your questions, and this is a big one for a lot of people, if your questions are treated as disloyalty, or if your nervous system overwhelm is reframed as proof that you need more healing, that is not empowerment. That is control, wearing spiritual language like a costume. And this is exactly why discernment matters so deeply, because not every push through resistance is growth. Sometimes your body is recognizing incongruence before your mind catches up, right? So your nervous system is firing off before the brain even realizes what's going on. And sensitive people often sense these things early, and they can look a little bit like the following, sort of like energetic pressure, emotional coercion, dependency dynamics, subtle shaming, a hierarchy situation, fear-based teaching. This is a big one. This is a very big one, particularly on the interwebs that we see everywhere now. Like, if you don't listen to me, if you don't follow me, all of these terrible things are going to happen. Forced positivity, that's another one. Spiritual bypassing. And manipulation disguised as higher consciousness. But many people have been conditioned to override themselves in order to stay connected, accepted, spiritual, or good. So I want to say this very clearly. You are allowed to trust the signals your body gives you. You are allowed to leave spaces that feel emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, physically, or energetically unsafe. You are allowed to question teachers. You are allowed to outgrow mentors. You are allowed to choose nervous system safety over spiritual performance. And real healing should increase your self-trust, not reduce it. It should increase your self-connection. It should deepen the relationship with yourself. Because genuine spiritual guidance does not demand self-abandonment as proof of growth. I think we need to normalize what I would call, I guess, a spiritual Sabbath or a spiritual timeout, if you like. A season where you intentionally stop trying to constantly fix or heal yourself. Not because you're abandoning growth and not because you're giving up, but because integration matters. And the nervous system integrates through lived experience, not endless consumption. You do not need to spend every moment healing, clearing, processing, decoding, analyzing, optimizing. Some seasons are for seeking and some are for building. Some are for integration and some are simply for just being human again. So this might look like spending less time consuming spiritual content, reducing emotional over-analysis, taking breaks from constant healing work, reconnecting with ordinary pleasures, allowing yourself neutral days every week, creating nervous system stability and an environment that encourages nervous system stability, building routines, which includes sleeping more, resting more, guilt-free, of course, laughing more, going outside, reconnecting with and moving your body, watching an uplifting movie with delicious popcorn surrounded by your loved ones. And I think this is especially important for empaths because many sensitive people secretly associate struggle with growth. So if things start to become peaceful, they start searching for problems that need to be fixed. Like, oh my gosh, what's going to be the next thing? But peace is not laziness, and peace is not avoidance. Safety is not stagnation. And if your spirituality is making you feel constantly hypervigilant, emotionally exhausted, or afraid to be human, then something has definitely gone off balance. Grounded spirituality should increase your capacity for life, not disconnect you from it. So if this episode resonated with you today, I want you to remember this, or I invite you to remember this. You can choose to or not. Not all resistance is self-sabotage. Some resistance is wisdom. Sometimes your soul is asking for integration instead of more input. And maybe right now your nervous system does not need another breakthrough. Maybe it just needs some or all of the following: safety, quiet, embodiment, steadiness, gentleness, nice long baths, ordinary life, less pressure, less performance, and more presence in your physical body. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to integrate. And you are allowed to stop turning healing and spiritual development into another impossible standard that you have to achieve perfectly. And you are absolutely allowed to trust that growth can happen gently too. If this episode supported you today, please make sure that you subscribe to the Intuition on Tap on YouTube, and my account is at Intuition Co, or your favorite podcast platform, including Apple and Spotify. And please do like and share with someone you think might benefit from this conversation. And of course, if you're looking for grounded support with me, if you would like private one-on-one coaching sessions or more support around nervous system regulation, emotional processing, and empath self-mastery, you can also explore the Empath AF community, hypnosis sessions, courses, and of course the Oracle AI tools through my website, Intuition Co. I have also created a companion process to support you to be able to differentiate between soul resistance and ego avoidance. So make sure you listen to that episode too. And until next time, please remember, regulation first, intuition follows.